The fluorescent lights in Mercy General's recovery room buzzed like angry wasps, casting everything in that sickly hospital glow that makes healthy people look drained. I sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair next to Lindsay's bed, watching my wife of 12 years sleep off the anesthesia from her gallbladder surgery. Mom sat across from me, knitting something that looked like it might become a scarf someday, her needles clicking in a steady rhythm that should have been comforting but wasn't. "She's been out for almost an hour," Mom said, not looking up from her yarn. "Doctor said she'd be groggy when she wakes up." I nodded, scrolling through my phone without really seeing anything. The surgery had gone fine. Routine laparoscopic procedure, they'd said. Lindsay would be back to her usual self in a week or two, bossing around the insurance adjusters at her office and complaining about my tool collection cluttering up the garage. That's when Lindsay's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. "Jack?" she mumbled, her voice thick and slurred. "Is that you, honey?" "Yeah, it's me." I leaned forward, taking her hand. "How are you feeling?" She squeezed my fingers weakly, a dopey smile spreading across her face. "I feel floaty, like I'm underwater." She giggled, which was weird because Lindsay never giggled. "The nurse said the anesthesia makes you say funny things." Mom's knitting needles stopped clicking. "What kind of funny things?" I asked, though something cold was already crawling up my spine. Lindsay's unfocused eyes found mine, and her smile turned dreamy. "I've been sleeping with Danny for 8 months," she said, clear as day. "Your brother has this birthmark on his—" The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Mom's yarn ball rolled off her lap and across the floor, unraveling as it went. The room went absolutely silent except for the steady beep of Lindsay's heart monitor, which suddenly sounded way too loud. "What did you just say?" My voice came out as a whisper. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. But Lindsay had already drifted back to sleep, that peaceful smile still on her face like she'd just told me about a nice dream she'd had. I looked at Mom. Her face had gone sheet white, her mouth hanging open. We stared at each other for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. "Jack," she started, but I held up a hand. "Not here," I said quietly. "Let's go outside." The hospital parking lot was cold for October in Maine, the kind of damp chill that gets into your bones and stays there. I pulled out my cigarettes, a habit I'd supposedly quit 3 years ago but kept a pack hidden in my truck for emergencies. This definitely qualified. "Did she really just say what I think she said?" Mom asked, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. I took a long drag, letting the smoke burn my lungs. "Danny, my own brother. That little shit." Mom rarely cursed, but when she did, it meant business. I always knew there was something off about him, with his fancy suits and his smooth talk. But your own wife, Jack. Your own wife. 8 months. That meant it started right around Valentine's Day, when Lindsay had been working late so many nights, when she'd suddenly become interested in going to the gym, when she'd started buying new underwear and claiming it was because her old stuff was getting worn out. "What are you going to do?" Mom asked. I flicked the cigarette into a puddle and watched it sizzle out. "I'm going to make them both pay for this, but not today. Today, I'm going to go back in there and act like the perfect, caring husband. Jack, they think I don't know. That gives me the advantage." I turned to face her, and I could see my own cold fury reflected in her eyes. "I'm not going to do anything stupid, Mom. I'm going to be smart about this. Strategic." She nodded slowly. "Your father always said you were the smart one in the family. Danny might have gotten the looks and the charm, but you got the brains." "Yeah, well, let's see how far his charm gets him when I'm done." We went back inside. Lindsay was awake again, more coherent this time. She smiled when she saw me, reaching out for my hand like nothing had happened. "Hey, baby, how long was I out?" "Not long," I lied smoothly, settling back into the chair. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, but okay. Did I say anything embarrassing? I feel like I might have been babbling." I squeezed her hand and smiled. "Nothing embarrassing at all. You just told me you loved me." Her face relaxed. "Good. I was worried I might have said something stupid." "Never," I said. "You're perfect." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but I delivered it with all the sincerity I could muster. Lindsay squeezed my hand again, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just handed me the ammunition to destroy her life. 3 days later, Lindsay was home and recovering on the couch, milking her convalescence for all it was worth. She had me bringing her tea, adjusting pillows, and fetching her phone charger every 20 minutes. The perfect opportunity to do some detective work. "Honey, can you grab my phone from the kitchen counter?" she called out as I was supposedly making her lunch. Chelsea texted, and I want to see what she said. Chelsea, Lindsay's best friend from work. The kind of woman who posted every meal on Instagram and knew everyone's business before they did themselves. If anyone would know about the affair, it would be her. "Sure thing," I called back, but instead of just grabbing her phone, I quickly connected it to my laptop with the charging cable. Lindsay was terrible with technology. She never cleared her cache, never deleted old files, and had no idea that her phone automatically backed up to our shared cloud storage. While her phone was syncing, I made her a sandwich and brought it out with the phone. "Here you go, turkey and Swiss, just how you like it." "You're the best." She kissed my cheek, and I had to fight not to flinch. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Hopefully you'll never have to find out," I said, which was true in a way she definitely wasn't expecting. That night, after Lindsay had gone to bed early, I sat in my workshop in the garage with my laptop, going through 8 months of digital evidence. What I found made my stomach turn. Text messages between Lindsay and Danny, starting innocent enough but quickly turning explicit. Photos that no brother should ever have to see. Email conversations where they talked about me like I was some kind of obstacle to work around. Danny. "Does he suspect anything?" Lindsay. "Jack? No way. He's too busy with his little handyman projects to notice what's going on right under his nose." Danny. "Good. I don't want to hurt him, but I can't stop seeing you." Lindsay. "Then don't stop. He's a good guy, but he's boring, Danny. You make me feel alive again." Boring. 12 years of marriage, and I was boring. I kept reading, documenting everything, taking screenshots. There were messages about meeting at Danny's condo while I was working, about the weekend they'd spent together in Portland when Lindsay told me she was at a work conference, about how they were planning to be more careful because Chelsea had started asking questions. Chelsea knew. Of course she did. I made copies of everything, stored them in multiple places, then carefully cleared the sync history so Lindsay would never know I'd accessed her files. By the time I was done, it was 3 a.m, and I felt like I'd aged 10 years. But I also felt something else. Power. They thought they were so clever, so careful. They had no idea that their victim was building a case against them with their own evidence. I went to bed and lay next to my cheating wife, listening to her breathe, planning my next move. The next morning, I called in sick to the 3 jobs I had scheduled and drove to the Splintered Board, the local bar where Pete McKenna held court every morning before the lunch crowd arrived. Pete was an ex-cop who'd taken early retirement after a back injury and bought the bar with his pension money. He knew everyone in town and heard everything worth hearing. "Jack Garrison," Pete said as I walked in, already pulling a beer from the tap. "Little early for you, isn't it?" "Special occasion," I said, settling onto a bar stool. The place was empty except for old Tom Hennessy in the corner, working on his 3rd whiskey of the day. "Everything okay? You look like someone ran over your dog." "Pete, let me ask you something, hypothetically. If someone was cheating on their spouse, how long do you think it would take for word to get around town?" Pete's weathered face creased into a knowing smile. "Hypothetically, about 5 minutes after the first person sees them together. Why? You got some gossip for me?" "Not yet," I said. "But when I do, you'll be the first to know." "Fair enough." Pete leaned against the bar. "But Jack, whatever you're thinking about doing, make sure you think it through. Revenge has a way of biting you in the ass if you're not careful." "Don't worry," I said, finishing my beer. "I'm going to be very, very careful." The plan started small. I began with Danny's pride and joy, his BMW. My brother had always been obsessed with that car, washing it twice a week, parking it far away from other cars to avoid dings. It was a symbol of everything he thought made him better than me, the successful real estate agent with the fancy car and the expensive suits. I waited until Thursday night, when I knew Danny would be at the monthly Chamber of Commerce meeting, schmoozing with potential clients. His condo complex had terrible lighting in the parking garage, and the security cameras had been broken for months. I slipped a small bag of sugar into his gas tank. Not enough to destroy the engine, but enough to cause problems. Then I tucked a package of frozen shrimp under his back bumper, secured with duct tape where he'd never think to look. In Maine's October weather, it would thaw and refreeze repeatedly, creating a smell that would get worse every day. The next morning, I got a text from Lindsay. "Danny's car broke down. Can you believe it? He's so upset." I texted back, "That's terrible. Hope it's nothing serious." But the real work was just beginning. I'd decided to turn Danny and Lindsay's own social circle against them, and that meant getting close to Chelsea. I found her at Starbucks on Saturday morning, just like every weekend, posting photos of her overpriced coffee drink on Instagram. She was exactly the type of person who thought she was sophisticated because she ordered complicated beverages and wore designer knockoffs. "Chelsea? Hi, I'm Jack, Lindsay's husband." She looked up from her phone, surprised. "Oh, hi. I've heard so much about you. Lindsay's always talking about how handy you are around the house." "That's me, the human Swiss Army knife," I said with a self-deprecating smile. "Listen, I'm planning a surprise party for Lindsay's birthday next month, and I could use some help with ideas. You know her better than anyone." Chelsea's eyes lit up. She loved being included in secrets, loved feeling important. "Oh my God, that's so sweet. She's going to love that. What did you have in mind?" Over the next hour, I let Chelsea talk while I listened carefully, filing away every piece of information she gave me about Lindsay's habits, her coworkers, her complaints about work. I played the part of the devoted husband perfectly, asking questions about Lindsay's favorite things, her work schedule, her friendships. "She's been so stressed lately," Chelsea said, stirring her drink. "All those late nights at the office and then her gallbladder surgery on top of everything. You're such a saint for taking care of her." "Late nights?" I kept my voice casual. "She hasn't mentioned being particularly busy." "Oh, you know Lindsay. She doesn't like to complain. But she's been working until 8 or 9 most nights for months now. Sometimes she doesn't get home until really late." I nodded sympathetically. "I had no idea. She usually just says she had a normal day when I ask." Chelsea leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think she's been seeing someone." My heart stopped, but I kept my expression neutral. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's been different. Happier, but also more secretive. New clothes, new perfume, always checking her phone. And there was this one time I saw her having lunch with this really good-looking guy at that fancy place downtown. When I asked her about it, she said it was just a work thing, but..." Chelsea shrugged. "It didn't look like work to me." "Huh," I said, as if this was mildly interesting rather than earth-shattering. "Well, I'm sure it's nothing. Lindsay's not the cheating type." "Oh, totally," Chelsea said quickly. "I'm probably just reading too much into things. She loves you to pieces." By the time I left Starbucks, I had everything I needed to know about Chelsea. She was a gossip who couldn't keep a secret, she was already suspicious about Lindsay, and she was desperate to be included in drama. She was going to be very useful. That afternoon, I drove by Danny's condo. His BMW was parked in its usual spot, but I could see him standing next to it with the hood up, looking frustrated. The sugar was doing its job. I pulled into the parking lot and got out of my truck. "Hey, Danny, car trouble?" My brother looked up, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Jack, thank God. This piece of shit has been acting up all week. It keeps stalling out, and now it won't start at all." "That's weird," I said, walking over to look at the engine. "These BMWs are usually pretty reliable. When did it start?" "Thursday night. I came out Friday morning, and it was making this weird noise, and then it just got worse and worse." I made a show of examining the engine, even though I knew exactly what was wrong. "Could be the fuel system. You might have gotten some bad gas. Has it been sitting anywhere unusual?" "No, just here in the garage, like always." Danny slammed the hood shut in frustration. "I've got 3 showings this afternoon and no way to get to them. My whole weekend is shot." "I could give you a ride if you want," I offered, playing the helpful brother. "Would you? That would be amazing. I'll pay you for gas." "Don't worry about it. We're family." The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent the afternoon driving my cheating brother to his real estate appointments, listening to him complain about his car troubles and his work stress, all while knowing exactly what kind of man he really was. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Jack," he said as I dropped him off at home that evening. "Lindsay's lucky to have a guy like you." "Yeah," I said. "She really is." 2 weeks later, I invited Danny and Lindsay's inner circle over for what I called a family dinner. Mom was there, of course, along with Chelsea and her boyfriend Rick. I'd spent all day cooking, pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, the works. Everyone kept commenting on what a wonderful husband I was, how lucky Lindsay was to have someone who took such good care of her. If only they knew. "This is incredible, Jack," Chelsea said, taking another helping of potatoes. "You should open a restaurant." "Just a hobby," I said modestly. "I like taking care of the people I love." Lindsay squeezed my hand under the table. "He's been amazing since my surgery. I don't know what I would have done without him." Danny nodded from across the table. "You're a good man, Jack. Lindsay hit the jackpot with you." The words came out so easily, so naturally. He really believed he could sit at my table, eat my food, compliment me to my face, all while screwing my wife behind my back. "Actually," I said, standing up, "I put together a little slideshow of family photos. I thought it would be fun to look back at some memories." I'd connected my laptop to the TV earlier, and now I clicked through a series of innocent family photos, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, vacations. Everyone smiled and laughed at the memories. "Oh, look at Lindsay's hair in that one," Chelsea giggled. "Remember when you had that perm?" "Don't remind me," Lindsay groaned. I kept clicking through photos, building up to the moment I'd been planning for weeks. Wedding photos, anniversary dinners, family barbecues. And then, suddenly, there it was. A photo I'd found buried deep in Lindsay's phone backup files. Danny and Lindsay in what was clearly his bedroom, both half-dressed, kissing passionately. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 weeks ago, while I was supposedly at a job site across town. The room went silent. Chelsea's fork clattered to her plate. Rick choked on his wine. Mom's face turned to stone. "Oops," I said casually. "That one must have gotten mixed in by mistake." Lindsay's face had gone completely white. Danny looked like he was about to throw up. "Jack," Lindsay started, her voice shaking. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I asked, my voice perfectly calm. "That you've been with my brother for 8 months? That you've been lying to me every single day? That you told him I was too dull to notice what was going on in my own house?" "You son of a bastard," Danny said, standing up so fast his chair fell over. "You set this up." "I set this up?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I didn't take that photo, Danny. I didn't make you betray your own brother. I just decided to share some family memories." Chelsea was staring at the frozen image on the TV screen, her mouth hanging open. "Oh my God, Lindsay, how could you?" "Chelsea, please," Lindsay begged, tears streaming down her face. "It's not what it looks like." "It looks like you're cheating on your husband with his brother," Rick said bluntly. "What else could it be?" Mom hadn't said a word, but she was staring at Danny with a look that could have melted steel. Finally, she spoke. "Get out of my son's house." "Mom!" Danny started. "Get out," she roared, standing up. "Both of you. Get out right now before I do something I'll regret." Danny moved toward the door, but Lindsay hesitated. "Jack, please, we need to talk about this." "No," I said quietly. "We really don't. You said everything I needed to hear while you were under anesthesia. Remember? Truth serum." Her face crumpled as she realized what I was talking about. "You knew this whole time?" "I've known since the day of your surgery. I've been watching you lie to me for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment to let everyone else know what kind of people you really are." Chelsea was already pulling out her phone, probably texting everyone she knew. By tomorrow morning, the whole town would know about Lindsay and Danny's affair. "This isn't over," Danny said from the doorway. I walked over to him, close enough that only he could hear me. "Yes, it is. And if you ever come near my family again, if you so much as drive down my street, I will make what happened tonight look like a walk in the park. Do we understand each other?" Danny's face was red with anger and humiliation, but he nodded and left without another word. Lindsay followed him, sobbing. After they were gone, Chelsea and Rick made their excuses and left quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama they'd just witnessed. Mom and I cleaned up the dinner dishes in silence. "I'm proud of you," she said finally. "For what?" "For not destroying them both." I laughed, surprising myself. "The night is still young." "Jack." "I'm kidding, Mom. I'm not going to do anything stupid, but I'm not done with them either." She nodded. "Good. They deserve whatever's coming to them." By Monday morning, the whole town knew. Chelsea had done exactly what I'd expected her to do. She'd texted everyone she knew, and they'd texted everyone they knew, and so on. By the time I stopped at the hardware store for supplies, 3 different people had already offered their condolences and told me what a stand-up guy I was for handling the situation with such dignity. Lindsay's office was a different story. I drove by around lunchtime and saw her in the parking lot, crying into her phone. When she saw my truck, she ran over and knocked on my window. "Jack, please, we have to talk." I rolled down the window. "What's there to talk about, Lindsay? You made your choice." "It was a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. Danny means nothing to me. He meant enough for you to risk our marriage. He meant enough for you to lie to me every day for 8 months. I want to come home. I want to fix this." I looked at her tear-stained face, her rumpled work clothes, her desperate expression. 2 weeks ago, this would have broken my heart. Now I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "You can come home," I said, "to get your things. I'll be there Saturday morning to make sure you don't take anything that isn't yours." "Jack," I rolled up the window and drove away. That afternoon, I got a call from Pete at the splintered board. "Jack, you need to get down here. Your brother's here making an ass of himself." I found Danny at the bar, already drunk at 3 in the afternoon, telling anyone who would listen that I'd set him up and that the whole thing was blown out of proportion. It's not like Jack and Lindsay were happy anyway, he was saying to Tom Hennessy, who was nodding politely but clearly uncomfortable. I was doing him a favor, really. Is that right? I said, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. Danny spun around, nearly falling off his stool. Jack, there you are. We need to talk, man. Brother to brother. I'm listening. This whole thing got out of hand. It was just physical, you know? It didn't mean anything. Lindsay loves you. She told me that herself. The bar had gone quiet. Pete was polishing glasses with more concentration than necessary, but I could tell he was listening to every word. She told you she loved me? I asked. When was that? Before or after she told me I was too boring to notice what was happening in my own house? Come on, man. You know how women are. They say things they don't mean when they're emotional. I stood up slowly. Danny was drunk enough that his reflexes were shot, so when I grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him off his bar stool, he didn't have time to react. Let me explain something to you, Danny, I said quietly, my face inches from his. You are no longer my brother. You are nothing to me. And if I hear you talking about my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, in my town, in my bar, ever again, I'm going to forget that we used to be family. Do you understand me? You can't... I shoved him backward. He stumbled, crashed into a table, and went down hard. Beer bottles scattered across the floor, and Danny ended up flat on his back in a puddle of spilled alcohol. The bar erupted in laughter. Tom Hennessy actually applauded. I think you should leave, Pete said to Danny, but he was smiling when he said it. Danny struggled to his feet, his expensive shirt soaked and stained. This isn't over, Jack. Yeah, it is, I said. And next time you want to have a drink, find a different bar. After Danny left, Pete poured me a whiskey on the house. That felt good, didn't it? Better than I expected, I admitted. Word of advice? Don't let it go to your head. Revenge is like alcohol. A little bit feels great, but too much will destroy you. I'll keep that in mind. But I was already planning my next move. The annual Founders' Day festival was 3 weeks away, and I'd been volunteered to help organize it. Actually, volunteered wasn't the right word. After the dinner incident and the bar confrontation, I'd become something of a local hero. People kept stopping me on the street to shake my hand and tell me what a class act I was. The festival committee had asked me to be the grand marshal of the parade. It's perfect, Mom said as we discussed the details over coffee. The whole town will be there. That's what I'm counting on. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. I'd had a custom banner made at the print shop in the next town over, paying cash and using a fake name. I'd rented a sound system and recruited some of the local high school kids to help with setup. Everything had to be perfect. The morning of the festival, I arrived early to set up my float. It was simple, just a flatbed trailer decorated with red, white, and blue bunting, with a podium in the center where I could address the crowd. The banner was hidden under a tarp, waiting for the right moment. Lindsay and Danny had tried to leave town twice in the past 3 weeks, but it hadn't worked out for them. Danny had lost his job after his boss heard about the affair. Apparently, sleeping with a client's wife wasn't good for the company's reputation, even if the client wasn't technically a client anymore. Lindsay had been encouraged to resign from her position after the office drama became too much of a distraction. They were both staying at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, pooling their money and trying to figure out their next move. I knew this because Chelsea, despite her initial shock and disapproval, had remained in contact with Lindsay and couldn't resist sharing updates with anyone who would listen. The parade started at noon. I stood on my float, waving to the crowd as we made our way down Main Street. People cheered and applauded, and I played the part of the gracious Grand Marshal perfectly. When we reached the town square, where the biggest crowd was gathered, I signaled to my helpers. They pulled away the tarp, revealing my banner, Homewreckers of the Year, Lindsay and Danny Garrison. The crowd gasped, then erupted in laughter and applause. But I wasn't done yet. I grabbed the microphone and began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for your support over the past few weeks. As many of you know, I recently discovered that my wife of 12 years has been having an affair with my brother. What you might not know is that I found out about it in the most unusual way. She confessed while she was coming out of anesthesia after surgery. The crowd was hanging on every word. That's the thing about anesthesia, I continued. It makes you say things you can't take back. But some of us remember everything. That's when I saw them. Lindsay and Danny were pushing through the crowd, trying to reach the float. Lindsay was shouting something I couldn't hear over the noise of the crowd, and Danny looked like he wanted to tear me apart. There they are now, I said into the microphone, pointing them out to the crowd. The happy couple. The crowd turned to look at them, and the jeering began. Someone threw a rotten tomato that splattered on Danny's shirt. Someone else started chanting, "Shame, shame, shame." Danny tried to climb onto the float, but Pete and several other men blocked his way. In his desperation, he shoved Pete aside and lunged for the trailer, but his foot slipped on the wet pavement. He fell backward into a decorative fountain that had been set up for the festival, landing face first in the murky water. Lindsay tried to help him up, but she slipped too, falling into the fountain beside him. They both came up sputtering and soaked, covered in algae and fountain muck, while hundreds of people laughed and took pictures with their phones. I stood on my float, microphone in hand, looking down at the two people who had betrayed me most deeply. They were ruined, socially, professionally, financially. They had nothing left but each other, and from the way they were glaring at each other in that fountain, I wasn't sure how long that would last. "Revenge is a dish best served in front of the whole damn town," I said into the microphone. The crowd roared its approval. Lindsay and Danny struggled out of the fountain and ran, pushing through the jeering crowd, heading for their car and whatever pathetic life they could build together somewhere else. I never saw them again. 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine that they'd moved to Florida, where Danny was selling used cars and Lindsay was working as a receptionist at a dental office. They'd lasted about 3 months as a couple before the reality of what they'd given up for a few stolen afternoons hit them. According to Chelsea, who somehow still kept in touch with Lindsay, they hated each other now almost as much as they hated me. I didn't care. I'd gotten my revenge, and it had been everything I'd hoped for and more. The whole town had seen them for what they really were, and I'd walked away with my dignity intact and my head held high. Mom was right. I was the smart one in the family. And sometimes being smart is the best revenge of all.